Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of Kitchen Live. Here with me, Lou, the dessert obsessed baker at Crumbs and Corkscrews, and welcome to another wet, wild, windy and chilly evening here in the Cotswolds. So come on in to the warmth of my Cotswold kitchen. I say warmth, it's probably not much cooler, warmer in here than it is outside. But wherever you're joining me from, if you're joining me on Facebook, YouTube, on the replay, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate everybody that follows when I'm live and everybody that follows on the replay as well. I love seeing your comments. But if you are new here, then what's it all about? Well, Kitchen Live every Wednesday, right here in my kitchen. I live stream step by step, creating a deliciously easy dessert. It doesn't matter if you are absolutely new to the kitchen or you're out there aiming for a Hollywood handshake and a star baker on Bake Off. I can guarantee you'll find something that you enjoy making and most importantly, enjoy eating. And that said, this evening's recipe then is, extra special mince pies. We can't do Christmas Kitchen Live without doing mince pies. I'm so excited for these. So in about 20 seconds time, we're going to dive in. So grab yourself a coffee, get cozy on the sofa, grab a piece of cake, grab a mince pie. You know, we're not that long before Christmas, so we're officially in you can eat mince pies any time of the day territory. Get cozy because in about 2 seconds time, we're gonna get baking. And as it says, let's get baking. Oh, hi, Rachel. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I hope everyone is well. Oh, I'm looking forward to sharing these mince pies with you guys as well. Thank you. So we're going to take I'm going to point the wrong way. I always do that. I'm going to take my humble mince pie. Now, I can't claim this as my mince pie because this recipe here and the recipe that we're going to be using is 40 years old. This is my granny's recipe, and it's a recipe I've been baking for mince pies for donkey's years. It's really easy. It's a really easy recipe, and we're going to lift it a little bit. Like I said, we're going to make these extra special. I mean, they're special as they are, but we're going to make these deep fill mince pies, and we're going to put a layer of custard in there, and we're going to put some mincemeat in there, and on top of it, we're going to have a brandy buttercream and a crumble topping. So we've got lots of different flavors and textures going on there. Oh, can't wait for these to come together. They're so good. The recipe is going to make about 12 mince pies. It's really easy to scale it up or scale it down if you only want a small amount. And I'm saying this is an intermediate on the skill. We always talk about skill, not because the elements are difficult. In fact, each element itself is pretty easy. It's just we've got lots of things going on here, and it can be, as we see on the cons, it can be a little bit time intensive, especially if you're a beginner. But if you are and you want to give them a go, just take it step by step. And in fact, you don't have to do all the bells and whistles that I'll be talking about, and we'll talk through those as we go. But taste-wise, we are going for decadent festive flavors here. Rich buttery pastry, the sweet and the spicy of the fruit mincemeat, and then we've got that brandy butter and the crumbly topping. It's really indulgent. So yeah, like I say, you can really adapt this pastry. If you don't even have to fill it with mincemeat, you could go with cherry filling or jam or something else like that. But we're going to stick with a traditional festive mince pie. Ingredients wise then, does look like a long list. Don't panic. I always say that when I've got a long list of ingredients. It's because I split everything out, but we've got quite a few with the same things and they're just different quantities. So for our mince pies, that's the main bit that we're looking at here. You're going to want 115 grams of salted butter, I use salted. You can use unsalted, but add a pinch of salt because it makes all that buttery richness more flavoursome. But it needs to be cold. So that is actually in the fridge, and I'm not going to get that out until we need it. So keep your butter in the fridge until you're ready. You're then also going to need 175 grams of plain flour. Now, we're not using self-raising flour or anything like that, just standard plain flour or all-purpose flour if you're in the States or in Australia. No raising agents in this. We're going to add about 50 grams of caster sugar. And again, I'm just using a regular white caster sugar here. You can switch this. I did think about using the cinnamon caster sugar today to sort of add that spiciness, but I thought I'm just going to stick with our regular white caster sugar. Then to fill, that's going to make our pastry. That's it. And then to fill it, we're going to use a mincemeat. Now you can use store-bought if you want. This is a Marks and Spencer's one. A jar is 500 grams, but you only want about half it. Depends how much you want to fill your mince pies. It's about 80p. Or what I'm going to be using, because I need to get it used so I can make a batch for next year, is my own homemade mincemeat. And this is quite chunky. It's got big chunks of apple and fruit in there and dried apricots. And there's a recipe for that on the site. I'm not going to go through this today. It's really easy to make, but it needs to cool and steep a bit before you make it. But what I tend to do with the mincemeat is make it like I say, make it the year before and then leave it, and it mellows over time in the fridge. So these are from last Christmas. So that's our mincemeat. We're also going to need an egg, and that's just for giving our pastry a brush over. And I'm just going to check myself on my recipe because I can make an absolute mess of this otherwise. Add the sugar. No, we're going to add the egg. See, I knew I forgot to add an egg in there as well. We're going to need an egg for our wash, but also an egg for our pastry. Naughty, you need 2 eggs. You'll need a little bit of milk there as well. And custard. I'm not making custard. I'm using good old Ambrosia, ready-made, store-own brand custard. The reason being is this is really thick. So when we put it in the bottom of our mince pie case, it's going to just sort of sit there and be all happy as it bakes through. If I make my own custard, it'll be thin. Or if I use the fresh custard, it's not the same sort of thing. I want a nice thick custard. So I'm just using an Ambrosia one there. For the crumble topping, then we're going to be using, I've put this all, I hadn't got enough bowls, so I've put it all together in one bowl at the moment. I've got 75 grams of rolled porridge oats. I've got 50 grams of plain flour and 50 grams of light soft brown sugar in there. So that's going to give a real nice caramelly texture. But I'm also going to add in 50 grams of butter. This is at room temperature. This doesn't need to be in the fridge. So that's our crumble topping. And also I might drizzle it with a teaspoon of maple syrup just to add a little extra flavour. Buttercream wise, then you're not going to need a huge amount of buttercream for this, so it's only a small batch. You're going to need 150 grams of salted butter or unsalted butter. Mine is currently on the back work surface because I forgot to get it out on time. And I need that to be soft, so it's been in the airing cupboard. And I literally remembered to take it out the airing cupboard before we hit go live. So that's there with a bowl on top of it at the moment, just keeping that heat in so it stays soft. You're also going to need your icing sugar, about 300 grams of icing sugar there, and your brandy. You don't have to put brandy if you want. You can do a vanilla or a cinnamon sugar or a different, but the buttercream here is doing that brandy butter element. I did also, because I remembered I had it in the cupboard, got the Cointreau out. And you could make an orange and brandy buttercream instead. I'd do that. We'll see. But that's all your ingredients wise. like I say, it looks like there's quite a long list, but there's lots of different things going on in there. You know, we've got multiples of butter and flours and sugar and things like that. Equipment wise, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with our hands. The crumble and the pastry, we're going to get these in to the bowl and use them as our equipment. For the buttercream, you'll also need a mixer, a hand mixer or a stand mixer. I've got the KitchenAid at the side ready to go. And you'll need a couple of other things. You'll need, obviously, a rolling pin and some baking parchment. You're also going to need a couple of baking trays. We're going to bake the crumble separate to the mince pie, so you'll need a tray which you can pop in your oven. Just lay your crumble out on that. So just a standard baking tray or whatever you have in there. And you're also going to need a tin. Now I'm using my cupcake tins. These are the deep ones because I want a deep fill on my mince pies. A traditional mince pie tin's quite shallow. And that's not going to give you the depth that you need on your mince pies. So we're going to be using a cupcake or muffin tin. And therefore, you're going to need your cutters to make a big enough circle so your pastry will fit in here and will come up the sides. So this is my largest in my pastry ring cutter set, and I'm just going to measure that. Is 3.5 inches, which, let's do centimeters, is about 9 to 10 centimeters in diameter. And then if you want to do some with tops, you don't have to. You'll need the next size down for adding the tops. So you'll need those, but judge the size you need with your pan. It should be, when you pop it on, and if you can see there, I've got my fingers in the way. When you pop it over, it should be slightly bigger than the diameter of your muffin tray hole. So that's everything you'll need. I have also got some here at the back. As you can see, these have got lids on, and these are with a store-bought ready-made short crust pastry, which I'm trialing out. So we're going to pop them in at the same time as our mince pies. But with that said, we better crack on. Let's go. Crack on. Oh dear, it's one of those weeks with work and everything. I'm not sure if everybody's feeling the same. It all feels Christmas all feels like it's coming very quickly. We had a family gathering at the weekend because we all can't get together for Christmas itself, which was lovely. We had Christmas dinner, we had presents, we had crackers, but it was quite scary that Christmas was not that far away. So then, for our pastry, we're going to do this in a mixing bowl. And I always say you want a nice big mixing bowl, not a small one, because you need to be able to get in there, get as big a mixing bowl as you've got. And we're just going to therefore add our dry ingredients to start with. So we've got our flour. That's our 175 grams of flour. And our 50 grams of caster sugar. I mean, how easy is that? I mean, that's two bowls back already. And sorry, with the equipment, just the usual rubber spatulas, knives, spoons, scissors, etc. So I've done that. And now I can get my butter out of the fridge. So I am actually making a half batch this evening, but you can, like I say, double this up quite easily. So this butter is cold from the fridge. And because what we're going to do is we're going to rub it in with our hands. So you're just going to pick it up and slowly work the butter into the flour and the sugar here. And you're rubbing it. You are not squishing it or anything. We're just rubbing it together, and the heat of your hands will, and the motion that you're doing here will soften that butter up. If our butter is too soft, and this is why we have it in the fridge, when we do this, I've said a few times, you just end up squishing the butter in. It becomes really greasy, and your pastry becomes quite fatty, leaves a residue. And what we want for these is we want a really lovely short pastry. So that's like a nice crumbly sort of, but holding itself texture. So what I do when I'm doing this is, so I'm not weighing my butter out and cutting it and getting it warm as I weigh everything out before I start rubbing it in, is whilst I'm preparing what I need to do, or if I know I'm going to be doing these that day, I'll weigh my butter out just as you've seen. I'll cube it, and then I'll just keep it in the fridge until I'm ready for it. That way it's in a really good sort of the best state it is for us getting in here and rubbing it in. So takes a little while, but it's worth it. If you don't like doing this, if you don't like getting your hands in and rubbing in and getting your hands in food and mixing it up is not your cup of tea, you can get things called a pastry cutter. They look like a big C with a handle with lots of thongs on them. And all that does is it mimics what I'm doing here with the rubbing in motion. This is fun, especially if you're doing it with kids. Just make sure that you've washed your hands first, and my hands have all been washed. What we're doing as well at this moment is as the butter are rubbing in there, we are effectively coating all the gluten and the flour grains with that butter, which helps make it all really, like I say, lovely and buttery and rich together there. It can take a little while, but it's fine. You can do this in food processors like the Magimix or similar as well. But I find this is the best. So, and this is why I say you want a big bowl, because you've got to get your hands in for this bit. Now, I showed you the tray that I behind me there that I said I'm testing with a store-bought pastry. So that's just a store-bought short crust pastry ready rolled. And I got one sheet and have got 6 mince pies, 6 deep filled mince pies out of that. So you can do this with store-bought pastry if you don't want to make your own. But I'm going to see, I want to see what they're like. I want to test it out, because you know me, I love a store-bought puff pastry. I'm going to get in a little bit more with this. So this is we're making, it's like a sandy texture. It's all coming together. It's a bit like an arm workout. Leg day was yesterday. We're going to add our egg, because I almost forgot about adding the egg to the pastry. That would have been embarrassing, wouldn't it? We're going to get this to a point and then add the egg in to bring it all together. So you can make the pastry ahead of time. It will freeze quite easily. Just make sure you wrap it up well in a pack, and you can freeze it for 3 to 6 months. And if you have any left over that you don't want to use, you can do the same with that. I have made these mince pies with a gingerbread dough before, and you can find the gingerbread dough on the website with the gingerbread tarts, the gingerbread chocolate tarts. This is coming together. I'm just going to figure out where my bits of butter. And we want to make sure it's really rubbed in, because if we've got lumps of butter in our pastry, they obviously will just melt as lumps of butter when it's baked. Got a few more bits. Nearly there. It's a bit therapeutic, this bit. I hope everybody is looking forward to Christmas. It's a difficult time for some. Right. So, I thought I just felt a lump of butter there. I thought, oh, we're nearly there, but we're not. So, there we go. So it's sort of like a sandy, thick texture. It will clump if you squeeze it together, obviously, because the butter's in there. But what you can do then is just make a hole. Now, there was a thing on Jamie Oliver, and he said, and I haven't tried it, and I've got no flour to try it, but if you have your hands like this, you know, our first inclination obviously is to rub it off, fine. But then we go and wash them. And he said, don't do that first. If you've got some flour, I haven't got any flour, rub the flour, and that acts to help get the dough off your hands, which I need to try out. So, apologies for the heavy breathing today. I'm a little wheezy. Just going to grab a fork. So we've got our egg then. I'm just going to give it a quick whisk just to break it up. And pour that in. Then I'm going to bring it together with my spatula. I'm not going to put my hands straight in there because I'm just getting eggy hands. It's not what I want. So just bring it together with a spatula or a fork or a spoon, whatever you're using. And then you can go in with your hands just to bring it. This is the bit. This is actually the bit that I'm not really a fan of. I don't like getting my hands like doughy. I'd be no good on bacon. Bring that all together. It's feeling a bit sticky. If it is feeling sticky, that'll be my egg. It's fine. Just bring it together. We're not kneading it like bread or anything. Right. I see a few lumps of butter that I haven't caught quite so well there. That feels a bit wet for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some flour and add a sprinkling in. If I remember where I cut it. So if your dough is sticky, don't dump lots of flour on it because you'll then go the other way and it will just be a bit of a mess. I'm just going to add probably about a tablespoon because also I don't want to make it too dry because then I'll have to add more in. And if I add too much in, it will just fall apart. So I'm just sprinkling that on. And the same thing is if when you pull it to bring it together with the egg and it's too dry, just add a sprinkling of water cold water. Don't use hot water because obviously the butter in there. Or you can add a drop of milk, but literally just a sprinkling. So I'm a little bit happier with that now. It's not as sticky. I've probably added about a tablespoon or so, as you just saw, but sprinkling, but it's just a little bit more manageable and not sticking to my hands. So I'm going to make that into a pack, and yay, I bought cling film and didn't open it before I needed to use it. Let's just, when you're doing pastry, having a bowl of very hot water is really helpful for getting the pastry off your hands. I do not know what Ocado have done to their cling film pack. There's various things that apparently I'm meant to open. Ocado, please make this easier in future. Oops. All a bit of things and fun. See, this is why I say it's sort of intermediate. I mean, it is. The pastry's easy enough to make as a beginner, but you might just want to. So wrap it in some cling film, and we're going to put this in. I've got, I can just see a big thing of butter. There we go. Wrap it in cling film and put it in the fridge. Now, ideally, you want to put it in the fridge for about half an hour. Or overnight if you want. It needs to chill before you roll it out. If we roll it out now, it's just going to disintegrate. So wrap it and put it in the fridge. I'm going to put this in the freezer. Perfectly fine. It's just going to accelerate the chill for me. Ready so I can show you rolling it out. So that's in the freezer. Put yours in the fridge, or if you're in a hurry, put it in the freezer. Don't put it in the freezer for too long, but it's fine. So that's us there. This is where we end up with lots of bowls this evening. When did I have lots of bowls? Oh, with the rocky road last week. So whilst that is in the fridge chilling or in the freezer chilling before we roll it out, we're going to make our crumble topping. So our crumble then is just a very easy crumble topping that I've used on the apple crumble cake the other week, and I've also used for just regular fruit crumbles or anything like that. So in here I've got rolled oats, rolled porridge oats. They're not the big jumbo oats. They're too big. You won't get the nice crumble sort of all coming together. So I've got regular porridge oats. They're really cheap and easy. I use them for my baked oats in the morning. I've got a little bit of plain flour and some light, soft brown sugar, soft light brown sugar. And that sugar, I'm using the soft brown sugar rather than the custard sugar for this because it will just bring sort of those mellowy, caramelly textures and flavours to the crumble that will sit with the butteriness of the pastry and the mincemeat and everything going on in there. So again, we're going to do this with our hands. So we've got our dry ingredients in here, and I'm going to add in my butter. This time is at room temperature, or you can do it from cold. It doesn't really matter. But we're just and we're just going to rub it in. Now, this time you can be a bit more, we're not being as delicate because what we want this to do is to get clumpy and to get clusters of our crumble together. So it sort of all is nice and lovely. With the pastry, we wanted to make sure that we were coating all those gluten and grains of flour with the fat of the butter. So that's what gives us our nice short, buttery rich pastry. So you don't have to do this. This is where I'm lifting this today, but you can just make the pastry and make that as just your mince pie, and do traditional mince pie with the pastry case and the mincemeat filling, and then adding a lid on the top. If you are doing that, remember you want to add a little hole in the top with a knife to let the steam escape. So whilst I'm just doing this, and that's in the freezer, let's talk about the mincemeat. Mincemeat wise, here I've got the Marks and Spencer's, which is just a classic mincemeat. Mince pies originated, everybody feels, I don't know, a mince pie is a very British thing. When I talk to my American colleagues, they're like, mince? Well, mince pies did originally, here we go, here's a little bit of background. Mince pies originally were made with meat way back in the 13th century. And they were significantly bigger than they are now. So they were effectively mince meat pies. But it was about the Victorian age when we know that they loved all things sweet, where the mince pie gradually became fruit-based. And it's from there, really, that the mince pies that we have now are sort of, that's their heritage. Mince pies did still at that point retain some form of animal aspect to it. They used to have suet in it, and you can still buy mincemeat with animal suet in the supermarket. But most brands now, most store-bought, will not have that in unless you're definitely looking for it. This Marks and Spencer's one doesn't have it in. You don't have to add it in there. But mincemeat itself is quite classic vine fruits, currants, sultanas, raisins. You'll have mixed peel in there, orange and lemon. It's cooked down with sugar and brandy, which helps preserve it in the fridge. But also you've got a mixture of spices, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, allspice in there. And that's what gives it that beautiful flavour. Now, when I make mine, I add all sorts in. Depends what I can get on offer. Let me just quickly rinse my hands again. So this has got a lot of apple in. When I had made it last year, I had a glut of apples, cooking apples that needed eating up. So I cooked those down in with the mincemeat. So I've got big chunks of apple in there. You can also grate apple if you want to. I think I've got some dried cranberries in here. Dried cherries are really nice as well. Dried apricots. You can put pretty much whatever you want in dried fruit wise. You could go for a tropical mix with some papaya or some pineapple in there, maybe some coconut if you want to elevate it. When I make this, I do make it and cook it down with the brandy. And the reason being, like I say, is because I put this in the fridge, leave it for a year to mellow and mature. And it's the alcohol that stops it from turning nasty. That sort of keeps it nice. But if you don't like alcohol, or you don't drink alcohol, or you don't want to put alcohol in it, you can make the mincemeat with like an orange juice, but it's not going to keep, because obviously the orange doesn't have the preserving qualities. So you can sort of swap that out and make this with an apple juice or an orange juice or something like that. And that said, you don't have to use brandy when you're making your mincemeat. You could use Cointreau, you could use like if you've got cranberries in there, you could use a real lovely ruby port, really give some depth of flavour and lift it again. But I do like my classic mincemeat just with my few bits and pieces, and see what else is in the cupboard and chuck it in. But we're going to be using this, and I need to finish off the Marks and Spencer's. Now, I've looked at this, and it does look like there's flecks of suet, but it's not animal suet. It's let me just check. Siri thinks I've spoken. Please go away, Siri. Apple puree, dark brown sugar, vegetable suet instead, and that just helps give it some richness. When I'm making this, I don't use suet, but I do put butter in for a similar effect. Just grab a sip of a drink. So then, whilst we're talking through all of that, I've made the crumble topping. This is quite unlike the pastry. This is quite chunky. That's what I want. Lots of nuggets in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to bake this at the same time as the mince pies. So you'll want to get a baking tray that you can just put everything flat on. The reason being is I don't want to, you can, if you don't want to put buttercream on these, just top your mince pies with the crumble and go for just a crumble top mince pie. But because I want a ring of buttercream, of the brandy buttercream, and to fill that centre with the crumble, I'm doing them separately here. So you want a good size baking sheet and some baking parchment or baking paper that you can just, don't need to push it in or anything. And we're just going to literally put that on there. Another bowl for the dishwasher. And pull it together. Spread it out. I'm just pushing this into a couple of little chunks so we can get some real good nuggets of crumble there. And then I'm going to give it a little drizzle with some maple syrup. You can use golden syrup. You don't have to do this, but I like it because it just adds a little bit of extra. Just give it a stir through and then there. So that is ready then to go in the oven. But for that to go in the oven, we need to do our mince pies. So I'm just going to pop that to the side. So then we'll just, before we get our pastry out, we will prep everything that we need to do. Just so it has a little bit longer in the freezer. So then I'm going to roll the pastry out as you guys have seen me rolling pastry and various stuff out before. And that is between 2 sheets of baking parchment. They need to be about the same size. And the reason I do this is I don't want to, we talked about adding extra flour to our pastry earlier. We don't want to add any more extra flour to it. By doing so between the non-stick baking parchment, we don't need to add any extra flour. It's not going to stick to our work surface or our rolling pin. We're going to layer it between these two. It's going to be really easy, she says, and hopes, to maneuver. That's as long as it's chilled enough in the fridge. And we can cut out quite easily from here. It also means that when we're rolling, we can put even pressure all the way across and move it and turn it and do all sorts of things. Now, I'm trying to leave that in the freezer as long as possible. You can see I'm procrastinating. When we're rolling, I saw someone the other day, TikTok video, you're rolling wrong. You should be rolling from here. Don't roll from the outside because you won't get even thickness. You should roll from the center like that. Each their own. But if you think, and this is what I always say and I always do, if you roll from the middle, with your pressure here, you will push down more on this center bit. And yes, you will spread the pastry or the dough, whatever you're doing, wider, but you will end up making that center element thin because you're putting more pressure on that and forcing it outwards. What I suggest, take your hands and take them as far as you can along your rolling pin. Now, if you're using a normal size rolling pin, this is a cake fondant rolling pin, you know, just do it to as far as you can. And when you're rolling, you roll with equal, you're not pushing down on it. You're rolling with equal pressure across by placing your hands at either end. That means that the middle bit where your pastry is gets equal pressure and it ends up being, she hopes, equal thickness across there. Yeah, that's our pastry. I am really apprehensive about getting this out of the freezer. With your muffin tin, then you can, and I have already done. But I'm going to get one more before we finish and get that out the freezer. Use your butter paper to just don't put any fat or anything in it, but just use the butter paper that you had your butter in, and just another granny trick, thingy it round in there, and it just helps the pastry not stick too much and get them out easier. So I've got to do it. I've got to get it out. I can't procrastinate any longer. We've got our rolling pin. We've got our tin. We've got our cutters, our wide cutter. Let's get the pastry out and hope that it's doing all right. That's all right. Yeah. So what happens here is the butter will start to get solid again, which is what we're after, rather than it being too soft. This is quite soft still, but we'll be fine. So putting it between, I'm going to work quickly because I don't want this to get too soft. Put it between the parchment and rolling out here. It means you can also easily move it and turn it round so you get nice, even thickness. I have baking parchment this time that's really slidey. And like I say, if you want to forego this bit, you can buy store-bought pastry. And you're rolling it out, so it's about 5 millimeters thickness. Sorry, I'm just concentrating on this because it's moving around all over the place this evening. Look, that's our pastry. I'm going to flip it over. I get the impression this is quite soft this evening. So you might want to, one-handed, that's a bit naughty. Make sure you leave it in as long as possible. That's going to be a bit soft, but it's fine. I'm just going to peel back both layers, and the reason being is obviously we're going to cut this out in a minute, and I don't want it to be stuck too much to the bottom layer. So there we go. I'm going to heat the oven now, preheat the oven to 180 degrees 350 Fahrenheit, so that by the time I've done this, because I get a feeling it's going to be a bit messy tonight, they'll be ready to go in. So I've got my pastry and I've got my cutter. So this is quite soft, but it's fine. I'm going to get what I can out of here. So my pastry is quite soft, but that's fine. I can work with it, but for yours, leave it in a little bit longer. When you've cut it out, just gently hold it in your hand and give it a little stretch. I'm not pulling it or tearing it. I'm just gently coaxing it round a little bit, which means I've already started to work it up before I put it in my tin. So once you're there, lay it on and then lift the sides in. And push in. Now, these are not perfect mince pies by any stretch of the imagination, but they are good mince pies. So yeah, stretch it out. My pastry is a bit soft this evening, but it's fine. It'll be fine. And then layer it in. Lay it on the top, then lift it into the pastry tin there. It's actually probably a bit too thick from me, but that's not a problem. Yeah, my pastry is a little bit on the thick side, but that's all right. There we go. And it will, just like you say, see here, even though this is soft, it will just fit in there really snugly. Tidy them up a little bit. And I'm going to see what I can get with this last bit of pastry. Hopefully it's not, I have a feeling it might be too soft, but we shall see. I say I've done a half batch this evening. Oh, this is very soft. Now it's warm in here. But let's see what I can get out of here for you. See if it will come off, but I have a feeling. There's that side. A bit like the Swiss roll the other week, just peel back gently. Now, if your pastry is like mine and at this point it's sticking, don't screw this up and go. Just put this in the fridge or the freezer for a few minutes, just to let that butter solidify again. There we go. So take our large cutter. I've got thinner this time. That's better. And put it in. But my dough is very, very soft. You can also just chill your cases once they're in a tin. When you're putting them in, be careful. Like I said, stretch it first out and then lay it in, but don't just push down. If you just push down in there, you'll rip it. Just lift the sides in. These are the messiest mince pies I've ever made. Just lift it in, and lifting it in means that you're not going to tear a hole in the bottom where your filling and everything comes out. So yeah. That one's that one's extra thin. Like I said, take your time doing these, pull them together. I'm not going to roll any more out. I'm going to wrap this back up and pop it in the fridge to chill. And I'm just going to wrap it in that. That's fine. I forgot. I did, like I say, I used the store-bought pastry earlier, and I've got a little bit of this left. And this I found was a lot more, it's paler in colour because it's made with like vegetable fats rather than butter. It's a bit more elastic, and it's perfectly good pastry. It's just not homemade and rustic like that is. But you can use that if you prefer, or if you're in a rush. So that's nearly full, up to temperature. We do need to do one last thing. So with our rather, let's be honest, messy mince pies this evening, there's a couple of things that we're doing. And one of those is adding our custard. Like I said, I'm using just a canned custard, a thick, old school custard, not a fresh one. I find they're too thin, and not one that I've made myself. I hate tins. Custard. I want this nice thick custard. So I want to put a spoon, not too much in, but a good spoon of custard in the bottom of each mince pie. You can use get smaller tins as well. You don't have to use the big tin, and store own brand as well. So this is going to squeeze in with all of that, the fruit. I love tin custard. Guilty pleasure. And then our last bit is to add our mincemeat. Actually, I'm going to keep the store-bought. Let's add our thing in there. So this is my homemade mincemeat. It's if you've done this and you've left it in the fridge, it will need a good mix-up, but it's nice and glossy and shiny in there. I can see those chunks of apple. And just fill your cases up. Don't put too much in. I've got too much in one because it will overflow the sides when we're baking. But make sure you cover that custard. I'm going to lift some off there. Oh, it smells so good. I've been looking at this all year going, shall I make mince pies in the summer? Oops. And then this is my big jar. So give it a good stir up. Oops. Smell it. Smell the brandy. I think this one's got a bit more apple in it. It looks a bit more chunky. You'd be forgiven thinking it was carrot in there because the apple's got the colouring from all the fruit and everything that's in it. Give that a stir. I'll let that pastry chill a bit more, and I'll make some more in a bit. So this will just go back in the fridge, but this will get used this Christmas. Over the next week or so, I'll be making a lot more mince pies for everyone. So that's basically it then. Our mince pies are going to go in the oven now for 20 minutes, along with our crumble. So that's 180 degrees. That's in there. And I'm going to put the store-bought pastry ones in as well. And 20 minutes. Oh, if you're putting a lid on, remember to give them a brush with some milk or an egg wash. I totally forgot, but it'll be fine on the store-bought ones. Like I say, remember there's lots of things going on in here. So whilst that's cooking, the last thing to do is to make our brandy buttercream and tidy up. So with this, the reason I've landed on a brandy buttercream is my lovely friend Katie, her mum, and I were talking the other day about mince pies that she used to have when she was a lot younger that had cream cheese on them. And she couldn't find them, and I couldn't find them. I could find mince pies that had cream cheese in the pastry, but it was like a swirl of cream cheese frosting on the top, which is one got me thinking and how I've ended up here. And I thought about doing cream cheese, and then I thought, actually, what's better? What would be better would be a brandy buttercream. What do you typically eat your mince pies with? Well, here they just go, they just disappear. I don't know what anybody eats them with, but we have custard or cream or brandy butter. So I thought, how about we make a brandy butter cream? So that's what we're doing. If you've seen this before, you'll know my buttercream recipe is quite easy. So this is our softened butter. This is the one that I remembered in the airing cupboard. When you push it in, it squishes down a little bit, but I'm not sort of squishing it too much. It's not greasy or my hands aren't falling through. So I've got 150 grams here of the butter, and all I'm going to do is put it on and whisk it until it's pale and fluffy, and that's it until we add the icing sugar and the brandy. But what you want to do is you're looking at taking that butter until it's really pale and smooth, and it's almost a whipped cream rather than a butter. So you do have to give it a good 5 to 8 minutes on this. And that's why it's important that it's soft, because if it's hard or it's cold when you do this, it's just going to become quite claggy. And what happens when we're doing this is whisking it a bit like eggs. We're incorporating air into it. We're making it nice and light and smooth. And it's just a nicer, pleasant eating experience. So I'm just going to keep, that's going to go for a while now. Let's put that to the side. So we've got our crumble in the fridge. We've got our mince pies in the fridge. We've got our buttercream on the go. And I'll whiz through what we've got again. So we thought do things a bit out of order this evening. Just going to check on those mince pies. So yeah, we'll just go through. I'm going to, when you're doing this, what you might find is if you're doing it with a stand mixer or with a hand mixer, it's easy. You can get to it. But remember to scrape down the sides of your bowl because the butter will just end up the sides a bit like this. So this is still quite yellow. This is nowhere near yet. So we're going to scrape it down. Now, you can, if you want, add a splash of milk here. And I literally mean a splash, because if you add too much, it will just become seriously cloudy. And the milk won't actually do anything. It will just not work at all. But it's the milk, just adding a tiny drop, is giving the beater, the whisk, something to work with alongside the butter there. That is as high as we can get. So I'm going to add brandy to it. This is just an Aldi brandy. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And in fact, I use the same brandy in my mincemeat. I did say you could possibly use some Cointreau if you want. You don't have to be brandy. If you've got like cherries in your mincemeat and you've made it with port, you might want to use a kirsch or something like that in your brandy buttercream, which then wouldn't be brandy buttercream. Oh dear. This is just that bit when you've done lots of things and actually you can just take a moment to stop. So we haven't put the lids on the mince pies for this, obviously, because we're going to do this and put the crumble on. When they're baking, and mince pies you see, and it bubbles up and everything, that's why we didn't put too much fruit mixture in there. We put enough in there to cover the custard and to fill the case, but we didn't pile it up because that'll just spill out over the sides, and it's not very nice. Let's have a scrape down. Now this is a little bit of a time-consuming thing, you know, just to put the effort into whisking your butter up before you add the icing sugar, but it does make things very different. I'm going to add a splash of milk. There you go. You could use double cream if you wanted to. So into there, I'm going to add my icing sugar. I've got 150 grams of butter in there. I'm going to add 300 grams of icing sugar. It's just a standard 1 to 2 ratio on this. I have seen, and I'm going to give it a go before I do it on the camera. I have seen a thing recently, and I think they call it Russian buttercream, which is you do this with your butter, and then you add condensed milk. There's no icing sugar in it. It's just the butter and the condensed milk. I bought the condensed milk, but I haven't had a chance to try it yet, which is why I'm not doing it this evening. But apparently it's very nice, very smooth, very easy to pipe, and obviously doesn't have all of the sugar in it. So this is, I'll show you it, and it will still look yellow in this light, but it's a lot lighter in colour there. I'm going to just give it one more splash of milk. If your butter is cold as well when you're doing this and you add the milk, it'll just almost separate itself. So then, we've got our butter ready. It's nice, like when you do it, you shouldn't have to force it. You should be able to, like I'm doing just now, it's really easy to move around, and it's nice and smooth in texture. I'm I don't weigh my icing sugar out, but I do need a spoon. The reason being is it makes an utter mess. And you want to add it in gradually to the butter at this point because it stops it becoming really thick really quickly. So what I do is I know I need 300 grams. I put it on my scales. Digital scales are a beauty for this. And I'm going to just set it to 0. So as I take it out, it's actually going to go into minus figures. So I know that I need to get to about minus 300 for this. So I'm going to add a couple of spoons. There we go. And then before I put it back on, for exactly that reason, I'm just going to gently fold it in, start that process off with the icing sugar and the butter. Otherwise, again, it just gets everywhere. So I'm going to add a splash of milk at this point, just a little bit to that to help the icing sugar and the butter combine. Put it on and it will start coming together. Now, when you're doing this, again, if you're using a hand mixer, it's easy. You can get to the bottom. When you're doing it on a stand mixer, you'll find that some of the icing sugar will fall in the bottom. When you take this off next, just give it a straight down. So you see the icing sugar there in the middle. So I'm going to add some more in. So I know I'm going to take this down. I'm doing this at this point in about 100 grams or so. So that's 200 there. Just stir it through. And I'm not trying to get it all combined. I'm just trying to take the edge off so when we turn it on, like we just had, it doesn't blow everything up. I'm going to put that on and I'm just going to scrape down what's on my whisk here to make sure that all gets in there. This time I'm going to start adding my brandy. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons here. So I'm going to add 1 in now rather than the milk. Oop. And give that a whisk. It's still brandy. Oh, let's have a look at these. They are puffing up nicely. And that's smelling good as well. So keep whisking it as well. Don't just, because we whisked it for that 5-8 minutes at the beginning, don't be tempted to just go, oh, well, it's had a really good whisk. No, keep whisking it. It will make it so much nicer to use. And say it's not difficult for me to maneuver that. I'm just going to get that off there because I'm going to use that for the last bit of icing sugar. Now, when I made this brandy buttercream last, and Ian took them to it. I did it on mince pie brownies. So we used the pastry, put the pastry on the bottom, I put the brownie on the top, and then iced it with buttercream. Somebody told me there wasn't enough brandy in it. So it's entirely up to you. I'm putting 2 tablespoons in of brandy. But if you want more of a brandy kick, instead of adding that milk to start with, you can add the brandy instead. I don't want to go too high on the alcohol. So we're just going, that's our last. You could do this with Baileys if you wanted to, if you didn't want to use brandy or, like I say, anything really. And last brandy slug. They are looking good. They are puffing up, as they will do. I've got some on the bottom there. And in fact, my homemade ones look a lot more golden than the store-bought. So let's just have a final wipe down. Whilst we do that last bit of buttercream. They've got about 4 minutes left on them, which is good. So this then is the final whip of the buttercream. So that's the icing sugar, the butter, and the brandy in there. And it's really quite light, quite fluffy. Going to show you. So this is it on the thing. If you just tap it on the sides, it will come off. There's plenty of brandy in that. You might want to put a little bit more in, but like I say, you don't want to go over the top. It's not boozy, but it's nice enough. So this is how your buttercream should be. It should be nice and spreadable. Look, I'm not having to force it through or anything like that. And that's really what you want for when you're going to pipe it, because if it's too thick and you try and pipe it, it will just clag up and your nozzle will pop off the end or things like that. So you want something that's nice and smooth, and you can just maybe it could have done with a little bit more brandy in it. I can get the brandy from it. I don't necessarily need any more. So that's it. As usual, they need to cool when they come out. I can't put I can't put cold buttercream straight on top of them. It'll just melt. So let them cool. Let them cool in the tin for about 5-10 minutes before you start to lift them out. Don't lift them out too soon because the pastry will be still quite soft. So just allow them 10-15 minutes in the pan and then put them onto a wire cooling tray, and they'll chill properly. And then when they're cool to touch, then add. And when they're properly cool, then you can add your buttercream. And what I'm going to do with that is, if you think this is the top of my cupcake, I'm going to pipe a ring around it. Just a smooth ring, just with a normal nozzle. And then I'm going to fill it in with the crumble, which is in the bottom there. And that's it. And then they will keep for, well, if the buttercream, so they'll keep for 3 to 5 days. If you don't want to, if you're making a big batch and you don't want to put the buttercream or the crumble on yet, once you've made the crumble like this, you can freeze it. You can freeze the mince pies as well without the buttercream on the top, and then just bring it all out the freezer and put it together when you're ready. That said, again, you can freeze the dough. And you can freeze the mincemeat, but actually you're best just popping the mincemeat in the fridge and letting it mature for 12 months like I've done. I'm just going to have a look. They've got 1.5 minutes to go on those. They does smell really quite Christmassy in here. I will pop everything up. I got it right. On the website. However, you can find this recipe for the mince pies just regular mince pies on there. They're the easy short crust mince pies. And then you can add your custard and the buttercream and all sorts of things. What I'll do is I'll post those different links in the comments. I'll post the link to the mince pie brownies as well. That has the buttercream on there. And the apple crumble has the crumble recipe. But you can bring that all together. It smells of Christmas in here, and I can't wait to get one for my treat later because I've been good. I've started training, PT training. But it's cool. We have made, like I said, these guys. These are my regular mince pies. This is my granny's recipe. Please don't do what I've done. Let your pastry chill properly before you roll it out. Mine was actually quite sticky and probably wasn't right for rolling, but hey, we'll go with it. They are an intermediate bake, and that's because we've got lots of things happening and things. But all those elements are easy to do. Just take your time, put a Christmas music on, put a Christmas movie on, get a glass of brandy or Baileys or something soft, cup of coffee, and have some fun doing it. Oh, here they're pinging. Just let's get all of these things out. Let's have a look at them. Oh, we've got a couple exploded. But these are the ones in there. As I thought, mine are a bit thick, but we've got some lovely things. And the custard is trapped under that layer of fruit. That's hot. I'm going to put that down. I'm going to leave those to cool. This is our crumble, so that's all ready to go and be cooled. We're going to sprinkle that over on the top. And then, like I said, I've baked some with ready-made pastry and put some tops on there. I'm looking forward to trying these out. They're not as golden as I thought they would be, as mine are in colour. I'm not sure if that's because of the positioning in the oven, although they did have plenty of space, or it's because I think it's Marks and Spencer's pastry, so I think it's got real butter in. It tends to have vegetable shortening and things in instead of real butter, and that might be why they're looking a little bit pale. But I'll give them... Maybe I'll give these a couple more minutes in there. I just want to see if they'll go a bit darker in colour. I'm going to put them on for maybe another... I don't want to over bake them, so maybe another 5 minutes. But I want to see what that store-bought pastry does. But anyway, you can make them with store-bought pastry. So this is what we've done. I won't run through the ingredients. There's a huge amount of them there, but we are using simple ingredients. We're using butter, flour, and sugar, and an egg. Don't forget the egg like I nearly did for the pastry. You can use store-bought mincemeat. Use the Ambrosia canned custard. Gonna dig into that later. And then for the crumble topping, you don't have to go with that if you don't want to, but you use the rolled oats, the plain flour, a bit more butter, and a little bit of sugar there. You could, if you wanted to, and I've just thought, and I have done it before, if you've got a small amount of pastry left over, if you've got just a little ball, you can tear that into small pieces and mush that up into the crumble as well. So you get a little pastry crumble as well as the oats and the sugar and the flour. And then for our buttercream, which is just going to wait here until everything is cooled, that's your butter, your icing sugar, and your brandy. That's a long one this evening. Thank you for bearing with me. Oh, Rachel, you're going to make them. They are really good. They smell good. Next week, oh my gosh. Next week is our last Kitchen Live before Christmas. Yes, Christmas is not that far away. I will not be doing Christmas Kitchen Live over the Christmas holiday. I'm going to have a break. I need to catch up on recipes and pictures, but we will be coming back in the new year. But next week, we're going to do something really, really easy, something you can do with the kids on Christmas Eve, get in there, or when they're off at school. We're going to be making Christmas pudding truffles. These are so easy. just to bring them all together. They make lovely last minute gifts, and they look good on the table all sharing, and it's good fun to make with the children. They're similar to the Rice Krispie Christmas puddings that we've got on the website, but these are more of a truffle base. So we're going to be doing that next week, and we're going to just ease into Christmas. She says, thinking frantically what she needs to get. Wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for watching. I hope you are safe and well. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. If you've made it this long all the way through, Rachel, I truly appreciate you joining me every week. Have a fabulous week. Enjoy the last weekend before the chaos. If you're Christmas shopping, good luck. And I will see you next week for some Christmas pudding truffles. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.